were the first to help move the government's infrastructure into the cloud in 2009. What were some of the challenges and what were some of the lessons learned from your first experience?
So you're right. In 2009, we helped move part of Washington, D.C.'s government into the cloud. 3 years later, I believe, 2012, the Chief Technology Officer, maybe it was 2011, of the United States issued something called the Cloud First Strategy, which was this idea, and it was very validating, of course, that the entire federal government, in this case, should be moving their infrastructure and their services into this thing called the cloud. Well, first of all, I think it's worthwhile saying what the cloud is, perhaps,
sure.
and then we can talk about it. Computing. It undergirds everything that we do, especially in our society and our culture today. And it especially undergirds everything that the government does. When I say the word government here, I mean federal, I mean state, I mean local. There isn't any kind of service or tool that the government provides that doesn't have some level of computing underneath it. Historically, the way that computing's been accomplished is in what are called data centers. These are big facilities, they have big air conditioners, they have big connections to the internet, and you buy a server, a big computer, put it in that data center, and off you run. There's a lot of cost to it. You have to buy the machine, and you also have to supply the people to run those things. The big thing that's behind, I think, cloud infrastructure is that you don't have to buy the server. You don't have to rent the data center. You don't have to supply the people to run the machines. You can just buy the computing service for a cost, usually per hour. It's in exponentially less expensive very often to do the kinds of computing that most often the government needs to do in the cloud, and most companies do. So you see a lot of companies, Netflix, for example, comes to mind, Pinterest, they're all in the cloud, right? Because it's so much cheaper to do these things now. And it is a true revolution. The government's a little bit different. In 2009, they, like a lot of other businesses, had invested a lot of money in that infrastructure, building data centers. Millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars. They had invested in people, training people to run those computers. And starting in 2006, 2007, and leading up to 2009, there was that sea change of cloud infrastructure providers coming, making their services available for literally pennies on the dollar. So the challenge that we had was twofold. One is we had to convince the government, in this case the Washington, D.C. government, that they could do what they were doing and had already invested millions of dollars in doing for a lot cheaper in this cloud thing. And two, and that's a technical challenge, and we also had the human challenge. And the human challenge is the resistance to change that is understandable, to say the least. And the truth is, Jennifer, we got lucky. And by that I mean there was one individual within this government who had the courage to say, we'll take this risk. We'll go with you guys. We'll try this one little piece in the cloud. And we moved that one little piece of this particular customer's infrastructure into the cloud, and it worked really well. And now it's 6 years later, and I'm proud to say, just over this last weekend, we migrated the last piece of Washington, D.C. government's dc.gov, the entire web infrastructure, into the cloud.
Wow.
It is running on our technology across several data centers. I think it's significantly cheaper, significantly more effective. It's really cool to see. 6 years, though. Wow. 6 years.
Was security a concern?
Absolutely.
How did you work that out?
Well, security, reliability is a concern because these are government providers and they need to be accessible to their citizens, especially in case of an emergency. You know, we've benefited from trends in the industry, frankly, whereas some of these infrastructure, these cloud service providers have gone through a process where they have proven their mettle to the federal government and so forth, and we've been able to lever off of that, as you were. We, of course, go through intensive security audits ourselves. Our things are tested quite a bit from various angles. So, and today we have Washington, D.C. in the cloud. We have the city of Baltimore in the cloud. And we just have started to work with the city of San Diego. So now we have 1% of America, 3.4 million individuals, are directly or indirectly using our technology today as the backbone for these services online through Interpersonal Frequency. But it's hopefully that's just the beginning.
Yeah.
But getting this sort of ball rolling down the hill, it's not, well, it has not been down. It has not been downhill, it's been uphill, but it's gaining a little bit of momentum.